What is it that you want to do with your one wild and precious life? What is so clear from the moment that we started working together is that Carolyn thinks of all of you as her deeply precious community. And when we began talking about the theme of hands, right away I responded that in welcoming this invitation, there is a meditation on hands that has to do with discernment and examining that one wild and precious life, and we were off to the races with the planning. One of the gifts of discernment in prayer is that it is steeped in so many different traditions. It's steeped in the Jewish tradition, in the Christian tradition, in the Hindu tradition, and it helps make very practical and understandable how it is, because all of us, when someone, or at least and doing spiritual direction for many years and trying to pray for many years, whenever anybody says prayer or reflection or meditation, I don't know about all of you, but I go, I don't do that very well. And I'm frankly often very suspicious if somebody says, prayer, oh yes, I'm excellent at that. Just come and see me. I want to say nonsense. But discernment helps us to be sensitive to what I name as the interior life. Discernment is making decisions in which God is a part of the conversation. That we make practical decisions all the time in our lives, and we are inviting God to be part of that life. And discernment invites us to reflect on not only what's happening outside of ourselves, and in our world, and in our community, and in our work, and in our families, but what is happening inside of ourselves. How is our body communicating answers and wisdom? What is the Spirit inviting us to? It's a way of sifting through all the reactions that we have and making choices. It's a way of stepping back, because we all naturally have different interior feelings, emotions, reactions, and we have strong insights. Sometimes we have all of our attractions, our desires, our repulsions, and all the stuff that goes into those things taking place. Living the daily examen is a way of practicing discernment. All these things are just a part of being human, and discernment helps us sort through those different reactions so that when we reflect on these events in our day, we have both causes that bring consolation and things that bring desolation, things that make us feel more isolated, more alone. And the examen is a very concrete way of sensitizing ourselves to these movements in our interior lives. One of the ways that I often refer to consolation for Joseph, for myself, is when I'm feeling more creative, I know that that's a movement of the Spirit. When I met May on her way in, it's clear that she is inspired by the natural world and wants to put together a little bit of the natural world with some flowers and some leaves and some beautiful colors for us to enjoy. It was clear right away that that's something that brings her joy. When I am in consolation, I also feel that sense of joy. But as I've practiced the examen over years, I've also described consolation for myself as itchy feet. Itchy feet for me means I'm being invited to act. I'm being invited to do something. I'm being invited to raise my voice, to speak for those who have no voice or those who have been silenced. And the examen is a concrete way of learning the way the Spirit speaks to each of us. And so that's where we begin. We begin the examen, and my invitation to all of you is to do it once a day. And we move through our day hour by hour, and we start to find that certain things stand out. when we are doing that, there is a way that it is captured in the handout in your worship aid today. I'm going to walk you through it, and if you're right-handed, I'm going to ask you to take your right hand and grab your left thumb, and the opposite if you're left-handed. Practicing the Examen, everybody always says to me, well, I can't remember the steps. Okay, here we go. There are 5 fingers on your hand. There are 5 steps. And we're going to walk through it in a way so that you could embrace this spiritual practice as a way of sensitizing our own hearts to what it is that the Spirit is inviting, to where it is that we find consolation, to where it is that we are pulled into desolation. We begin with thumbs up. So if you're left-handed, take your right hand and grab your thumb. So you know we're going to begin in gratitude. There is so much to be grateful for. And we say, all right, I want to begin with thumbs up. What is it that I want to be grateful for? I want to be grateful today. Oh, some extra light in the morning. Hooray. Hooray, hooray, hooray. I got there. I sit in the same chair every morning, and I looked out, and I can see the Bridgers from my chair, and I just thought, it invited me right away into an exhale, into a sense of peace, into a sense of feeling alive and grateful for that life. And gratitude has that wonderful inclination also that it moves us off of ourselves, right? It moves us off of, I don't know about any of you, but if you've ever, find yourself navel gazing, you're like, okay, I am clearly the most interesting thing in my world right now. And thank you for playing, right? But if we start in gratitude, we start with thumbs up for where it is that we are most grateful. And I'm a bit of a word nerd, and gratitude actually comes from the same word, gratia, where we get the word grace. So what is that grace of gratitude? What is that movement of gratitude since the last time you did an examen? Since the last time you looked at the events of your day and of your life and said, this is what I'm most grateful for. Now I'm going to invite you to the next step. So go ahead and take a hold of your index finger. 1, right? We use it all the time to indicate 1. So we're going to ask the Spirit, ask God, ask the divine to point, because this is also the pointer finger, to point to one thing that you want to look at since the last time you did an examen. To look at that one thing. This past week, it was a conversation with my wife. I needed to look at that and ask myself the question, Joseph, what was your part? What was your part in that conversation that didn't go as well as I had hoped? Right? But to look at that one thing, and maybe it's a wonderful thing. Maybe it's something that inspires you. Maybe it's something that fills your heart with joy. But maybe it's something that's challenging to look at. But we're asking to look at that one thing and to see, does it move us into greater consolation? Does it move us into a sense of groundedness or peace or of joy? And gradually we begin to learn what is the language that the divine uses to work in our heart. For me, I mentioned itchy feet, right? I know that that's how the Spirit tells me, you have got to act. You have all these beliefs. You say you want to work for justice. Pay attention to those itchy feet, right? Creativity is another sign of consolation for me. And you'll learn as you do and practice the examen what the language is of the Spirit for you and for your heart and for your interior life. But we're asking the Spirit to point to one thing that we can look at since the last time. Or maybe you're going to move through the day and see where you felt consoled, or see where you felt desolate, because we can often learn a great deal from desolation as well. When we're pointing to that one thing, or looking at that one thing in doing this prayer practice or this meditation practice, I want to encourage you that to reach for God, to reach for the divine, is to reach the divine. I'm going to say that again. I told my students this year after year after year. To reach for God or to reach for the divine is to reach the divine. If we believe that God can be found in all things, if the divine permeates all things, including our interior, then to reach for that is to reach it. Now I can see some of you are grinning. You're thinking, what on earth is he going to do with the middle finger? So go ahead and take hold of your middle finger. I love the laughter. It's just fantastic. So I'm going to ask you, all of us, well, I will use myself as an example. I came to the end of an off-ramp just the other day on 19th. And boy, it was close. Because there was somebody who I just wanted to say, you know, you never lose betting on dumb. You know, this person, I wanted to know, like, how did they didn't even look to see that I was parked right there. Vroom! They just slid right in. And then I decided this person had cut me off. And then I reframed it. And I said, if I let them in, then they're not cutting me off. And suddenly something that was really hard for a moment shifted. If I let them in, then they're not cutting me off. So when you're holding your middle finger and you're doing your examen, you're saying, well, where have I flipped off? Where have I rejected love, the divine, God, grace in my life? Because we all struggle with that all the time. And sometimes that rejection is of ourselves. So when we know that that happens in our lives, that we reject grace or love or the divine, we reject faith, hope, and love. So we're asking for the ability to see that in our interior. Now, those of you who are in a committed relationship and are wearing a ring, can you raise your hands for me if you have a ring on your left hand? There you go. So as you take hold of your ring finger, every successful relationship has an element of forgiveness in it. Every successful relationship has an element of forgiveness. And I was giving a panel talk many years ago, and I had the distinct privilege of giving this talk with Helen Préjean. And Helen and I were on this panel, and she gave the best definition of forgiveness I have ever heard. And I memorized it, and it sits in my heart. And when I do my examen and hold on to that ring finger, it's an invitation to forgiveness. Because the ring finger reminds us of relationship, and every successful relationship has that element of forgiveness. And Helen defined forgiveness this way: giving up all hope for a better past. Ooh. That was just a zinger. It went right in there and it stayed, and I'm grateful. Giving up all hope for a better past. I could have remembered that. If I had only remembered that in my conversation with my wife a week ago, that would have been better. But when I think of the ring finger and we think of the practice of forgiveness, and think about giving up all hope that things are going to be different in the past, we are freed. We are freed to move forward. We are freed to move into seeing how the Spirit is moving in our lives. We're freed to accept the invitation that comes in consolation. And we are also freed to know the insights that come when we are spinning in desolation. Many years ago, I would repeatedly in my 20s, I would repeatedly engage in what I call retail therapy. Anybody know about retail therapy? Right, I'm having a terrible day, right? And so what am I going to do on the drive home? My truck would just drive itself to Tower Records. I love the fact that everybody in here smiles when I say that, because I say that I'm not downloading anything. I was buying cassettes. Shh. And I had a copy of Abba Gold in the truck. I had a copy of Abba Gold in my apartment. I had a copy at work. I would go into Tower Records and get this. I would buy something that I already owned. Right? But whenever we engage in retail therapy to try to make ourselves feel a little bit better by getting something, right, we know that the joy is evading us. And whatever retail therapy looks like in your life, because maybe it doesn't look like Tower Records anymore, maybe it looks like click to add to cart, or whatever it looks like. And we need to offer ourselves and be gentle with ourselves and give ourselves the gift of forgiveness, giving up all hope for a better past. So now, turn your pinky into a hook and take hold of that hook. We're asking to see what has hooked you today, what has hooked you today that you want to be freed from tomorrow. So there is somebody with whom I work, and they make my eyeballs switch sockets. Oh, look, here they come. Whoop, there they are. And we all know that thing that sort of bubbles up inside of us, and here they are, they're coming towards me. Sometimes I take the long way around in the hospital. I will go down a set of stairs, I will walk on that floor, I will then go up the set of stairs, and then continue walking on the floor that I already left, because I'm going to avoid a particular department. I'm going to avoid that person that makes my eyeballs switch sockets. Because all of us have those moments in our lives where it's like, oh, hello, anxiety. Haven't seen you in 5 minutes, right? We have those moments and we want to not be hooked by that same thing. And when I find myself walking down the hallway, going down those stairs, walking along the third floor, then going back up to the other floor, I am clearly hooked, right? That relationship or that difficult person or that person that makes my eyeballs switch sockets, I knew that I was going to encounter them. And if nobody drives you crazy, and if nobody calls out that anxiety on you or whatever team you're on, then it's you. Okay? When we are hooked, we ask for the gift of moving into tomorrow by not being hooked by the same thing that hooked us today, so that we can move into tomorrow with enthusiasm. And as I already acknowledged, I'm a bit of a word nerd. Enthusiasm is the perfect word for that, because it's en theos. It literally means filled with God. So if we can move through gratitude, looking through that one thing to understand how our hearts move towards consolation or are moved into desolation, if we can look where we have rejected or flipped off love or grace or the divine in our life, if we can have the courage to ask for forgiveness, to move into tomorrow with enthusiasm and not be hooked by the same things that hooked us today, then, friends, we will begin to learn the language of our own heart and how the divine speaks to our hearts. And we can accept the invitation to those things that console us. Because, and I will leave you with this, that joy, deep and abiding joy, whatever it is that you find in the palm of your hand or the place where you say your name and know who you are, the place where you say your name and know who you are, if that's the place that you find joy, then doing this simple Examen prayer on your hand is a way to live the Examen, is a way to cultivate joy.